We've been working on it for a while now, and Matt's our go-to guy from Dell. Matt, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I've been in displays for about 12 years now. So I'm the product line manager for Dell Commercial Displays. I've got responsibility for a lot of our biggest customers, mostly in the western part of the country. So, you know, a lot of engineering, a lot of manufacturing, a lot of creatives amongst that customer set. And I'm the displays technologist for North America. In a previous life, I worked for our Singapore group until working and living in time zones that were 13 hours separated kind of finally did me in. And I had the privilege of planning our U4919DW, which is the world's first dual QHD monitor. So that was good times.
Very cool.
Well, good. Well, let's see, Adam, I'll try to share some content here. See if I can get the screen I want to show up. There you go. How's that? You seeing a nice blue title slide?
Yep, it says Dell Monitors for Engineering.
Yeah, there we go. All right, that's us. Okay, well, I think, you know, over the past year, certainly, and then this year, you know, I think we were all excited about 2020 being over, and then Snowmageddon or Snowvid hit us here in Central Texas and delayed me on this. But, you know, suffice to say, work has changed. So all of us have gotten a lot more used to working from home and being productive, not even seeing the teams that we work with day in, day out on a daily basis. And Dell has been a big part of this for a long time. A huge part of our global workforce works remotely. So I think that, you know, perhaps we were in a little bit better situation than a lot of companies were to do that. You know, we've been giving laptops out, you know, as the corporate standard for years and years. So it was kind of interesting how it all happened for us. One evening, our vice chairman sent an email out to everybody and said, hey, don't show up tomorrow, work from home. And we haven't gone back since. So, you know, this future of work is definitely something that has been evolving over the past couple of years, right? And we've seen it in workflows, right? To where, you know, we've moved more from local storage being where projects and files are living to shared storage and cloud storage and that kind of stuff, so we can all collaborate more. You know, mobile workstations becoming a much bigger part of the market than just the fixed workstations. So it's not something new. It's just something that I think has been accelerated. And today, you know, really kind of wanted to chat through some of the things that displays can really do to help improve that productivity. You know, part of the reason why I'm so passionate about this technology, this field, this business, is because, you know, we're such visual creatures, and the display is the way that we perceive so much of the work that we're doing on our computers, right? So, you know, audio is important and all of that kind of stuff, but especially when you're in SolidWorks, I mean, it's visual. That's where everything is done. And so monitor size, monitor resolution can have a big impact on how effective you are, how efficient you are. Just because, I mean, if you were doing assembly of something, you would have a clear and open workspace. You know, those of us who with hobbies where we build things and that kind of stuff, there's nothing worse than trying to work in a cramped space. And the monitor is that digital workspace for the models and everything that we're working on. So larger screen sizes, you know, bigger is definitely better. Lets us see and do more. And that's something that I think, you know, has really kind of permeated through at least the Western world, right? Where we're creating so many products, we're creating so much content, and we do a lot of digital design. I think that message has really gotten across pretty well. I think the interesting wrinkle that's been coming up in the last few years is these dual monitor setups moving to bigger and higher resolutions. And then as these ultra wide monitors have been coming in, there's been a lot of interest and, some concern as well about, how is that going to impact, how's that going to play nicely with my tools and such. So Adam, I think you've been playing with one of our latest ultra-wide monitors for a little bit. What's your experience been with that?
Yeah, I have what is the Q40 UW, I think is what it exactly is. It's a 5K by 2K, 40-inch wide monitor. And I'm not gonna lie, it took a little getting used to because all my other screens were like standard definition. I never made the leap to like the 4K realm because I didn't know how green the grass was. But I'm super thankful that I have it, and also it's changed the way I do. Well, changed the way I use all my programs pretty much, including SolidWorks, which has always been kind of a roadblock, in the past with like 4K monitors. Something I definitely wanted to share today. But yeah, and then between the Dell Display Manager and then organizing virtual desktops, everything's. I mean, it's changed the way I teach, at university, and then, the way I do web presentations and Zoom meetings for clients. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in chat, let's, feel free to kind of hop in, everybody. What kind of monitor are you using now? Are you using full HD? Are you doing QHD? Have you made a jump to 4K? Just so Adam and I can kind of get a feel for what everybody's baseline is. And then maybe we can even kind of tailor some of this a little bit more. Okay. Good. All right. So let's see, let's spend a little bit of time talking about that size, the resolution, the features, and all that kind of stuff. So, just real quickly, just to disambiguate, right? There are a lot of different resolutions that have been available for a long time. Full HD really kind of came out of the digital transition. So those of you that remember when we had 720p, and then for a while, that was kind of a standard, and then pretty quickly the whole world moved to full HD 1080p, and that's really kind of the baseline, the cornerstone for a lot of the resolutions that have grown since then. Now that HD, the 720p, still sticks around a bit. So those of you that have QHD monitors, so 2560 by 1440 resolution, that's quadrupling the resolution of that 720p. And we still see those QHD monitors being used in engineering an awful lot. If you're using a 27-inch monitor, there's a pretty good chance that it's QHD resolution. And then we've seen the growth as we quadruple the resolution of that 1080p monitor, then we get 4K. And then to Adam's point earlier, now we've been playing around with, hey, if this is the physical space that we have to work in, how can we provide more virtual workspace in that? And so we've seen those QHD resolutions get stretched wider into 21 by 9 aspect. And then Adam was talking about our new U40 21QW, which is the world's first UHD plus monitor. So we start with probably a 32-inch 4K monitor that you've seen, and then add another third to that on the size. So as we're working through that, and as we're developing these new products, certainly one of the things that we're doing, with our 8K monitor, for example, is just pushing the boundaries of what's possible. But the other thing that we're concerned about, and that we do always keep top of mind, is, hey, at the end of the day, this is a human perceptual device. This is a computer I/O device. And so the human perceptual factors are super important for us. And so just kind of real high level, real quick, where we kind of start from is assuming an average vision, corrected or not, of 20/20, that subtends out at 1 minute of angle. OSHA has some recommendations about how far away we should be from our displays. They say at least 20, within 40, so it may not be just incredibly helpful, but it kind of gives a bound and a range. Most of the times we see people are between 25 to 30 inches at most on their displays. And so at 30 inches, that 1 minute of angle ends up being just slightly less than 1/4 of a millimeter. So that's the smallest detail that we can actually perceive. And then if we translate that into the pixel density for a desktop monitor used in these kind of environments, that's somewhere between 110 to 140 PPI. Is kind of the limit of what we can see. Now, of course, we can play around with that a little bit with scaling, to where the OS will go ahead and blow things up to where they're fitting into a decent density for us. But that's not always perfect. So, Adam, I think you've definitely seen some of that and run into that, especially as you were going to the U40, right? You had to make some adjustments.
I did, yeah. Specifically inside of SolidWorks, actually, I had to change how big the icons were, so that they would show up at the proper scale. In other words, comparing the scale from like the standard definition monitor or like a normal high definition monitor to the ultra wide 5K by 2K, the icons got really tiny, and so I needed to adjust all that in the SolidWorks interface. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, one of the pieces that, we kind of have a little bit concern on there is that if you're buying the resolution, we want you to be able to use the resolution, right? And so if there's a lot of scaling that's being used, then you're actually kind of decreasing the value of the resolution that you purchased, because now you're just making the same number of things bigger so that you can see them better. So what was kind of your impression, even after making the icons bigger and that kind of stuff, going from your lower resolution monitors to 11 million pixels on one piece of glass?
Well, from like just user perspective, I suppose like my SolidWorks models like looked like more continuous and less like granular. So if I'm looking at like some surfacing and there were, one, it's thin, so it's difficult, right, for monitors to display that correctly. And then two, with my settings at kind of like a neutral position, not anything crazy, my quality settings inside of SolidWorks, I definitely saw an improvement on the display itself. But then also with other applications like say SolidWorks Visualize, I had like 4 times as much real estate when I was rendering. Like my view palette was 4 times as big. As a matter of fact, when I loaded it up, I was like, why is my view palette so small? Oh, that's because I had all my settings for my standard definition monitor. So now that I'm running a half decent graphics card, and so I could actually blow that up, right? I didn't have to like detach my window panes and put them on other monitors. I had plenty of real estate on the 5K by 2K. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so just to kind of dig in a little bit more, because I think one of the pieces is a lot of engineers are now using mobile workstations that have high-res displays in a teeny tiny space with the flip-up, hinge-up screen that comes with that mobile workstation, right? And so, as we're looking at the monitor that you get, then that area definitely becomes part of it. And as you're thinking about maybe upgrading, that area that the monitors are taking up on your desktop is definitely a piece as well. Especially if you're responsible for making decisions for other people, even if you're going from duals of one sort to an ultra wide or something, sometimes there can be a little bit of a perception that, hey, you've kind of taken some of my monitor space away from me, just purely looking at the desk as you approach it and the square inches of glass that are actually sitting there looking at the viewer. So you can see, just kind of in terms of making some comparisons, if you're coming from dual 24-inch monitors, then a single 38 ultra wide is actually going to give you even more area just in terms of square inches of glass. And if you're coming from dual 27s, of course we have that 49-inch that I was talking about, and that by design is exactly the same. And we'll see, kind of a similar story when we go to resolutions. So not the square inches of glass, but how many pixels we get. And now we start to see some of the real advantages that we can get by going to some of these newer, higher resolution monitors, right? If you're starting with dual 22s in the engineering world, I don't come across that much. Adam, maybe more in a educational type setting. But you're going to get almost a 25% increase in resolution to that digital workspace area Adam was just talking about by going from dual 22s to a single 34. Coming from dual 24s to the 38, you get almost a 50% bump, right? So some of these newer sized and shaped monitors can actually provide quite a bit more workspace to do. But really kind of the last thing to leave you with is, what are the inflection points? What are the things, the couple nuggets you can stick in your mind as you're looking at all the options that the market and that Dell offers? What are the kind of sticky spots that you should be looking at? And first off, if you're doing full HD, if you're doing something, kind of fairly low res for engineering, whether because, there's older graphics cards that are being connected or whatnot, those are really best in smaller sizes. So 24 inch or smaller. If you're going to go up to QHD, which in my mind, I think is really probably the biggest standard for engineers, then that 27 inch is almost optimal. And of course, anything that takes that base size and then adds to the side of it. And then by the time you get to 4K, then you really want to start at a 40 inch into a 43 inch monitor. And that's really going to give you the best balance of size and resolution for best visibility. Now, Adam, as you move to the U40, you talked about the icons a little bit, but I think we all know that some of the tools, some of the packages that are built into SolidWorks, have come from other sources, right? They've been acquired, they've been bolted in. So as you were going through, you mentioned a little bit about Realize, but some of the other tools, how did the scaling work across all that? And what was kind of your experience with the density you had in the U40 being pretty good?
Well, I mean, I don't pretend to be a monitor expert actually at all. That's why we have you here, man. But so like for the last 8 years or so, let's just say, maybe not 8, maybe like 6. Anytime I went over to a customer's computer and they said, "Hey, I can't see anything," or "There's some problems," or like, "I can't see my relations," the sketchline looks funny. Why does it look funny? I'd just say, "Oh, you're probably running in 4K. Turn it off," right? And that was just like the standard SOP thing that I did day in and day out. And then SolidWorks eventually got better, I think in 2017, and said, "Oh, there's some 4K functionality in there." And so I tried it again, and I wasn't convinced. I was like, "This works. This is like an 80% fix," right? And the funny thing is, like, nothing's changed about that 4K stuff that they've added to SolidWorks, but then just jumping to a much larger monitor with the pixel density has made all the difference for me. And that's exactly what I tell customers too, not going forward. It's like, hey, well, if you're buying a laptop, you don't need the 4K, but it's nice to have 4K for other applications. But then if you're looking at buying a monitor, here's what you need to know. And that was essentially that, if you're going to be using SolidWorks and you want that 4K resolution across all your screens, then put SolidWorks on the 40-inch monitor, and then every other program on your standard sort of resolution or standard aspect ratio. Is this a good time too to jump into SolidWorks? I don't know, or do we want to do that? Was now the time? Or coming up?
Well, I tell you what, I've got one more little piece here. So we've done some productivity studies with IDC, with Forrester, and others. So as you're looking through and maybe you're trying to build a business case, or maybe you're just trying to decide what's right for you, I've got a tiny URL at the bottom of the screen here that you can just type in. It'll pull up the entire study and give you some of those productivity improvement inflection points as well. I just gave you the human perceptual inflection points, and these will kind of let you know, like, hey, if I've got a 24 inch and I go to a 27 inch, or I go to dual 24s, right? I just buy another one of what I've got, or I go to one of these new ultra wides that Matt and Adam are talking about, what kind of performance increase can I see here? This study really gives you a lot to work with from there. So good. That's that section. Adam, let's dive into some of the SolidWorks stuff, and then I'll come back and talk about connectivity for a little bit.
Okay, well, my SolidWorks screen coming up here soon.
Oh, are you painting fences?
Am I painting fences? Oh no. Show screen. Screen
Yep,
2.
Got it.
Cool. Okay, for whatever reason I can't see it, but that's fine. Just for a second, but now I should be back, yeah?
There you go. got your SolidWorks screen.
Okay. So this is an ultra wide, which is maybe why it shows up with bands on it. It turns out you can fix that pretty easy in OBS, but this is SolidWorks at 4K, and the thing that I think I like most about this is that one, it visually, there's no visual negative side effects, right? And that's because what I've done is I've gone to customize, and I've changed this icon size to medium, which is why everything looks about equivalent, like equivalent to like the size, like the icons look about equivalent to the tabs. The other thing, I'm not sure, I was playing around with tooltips and I changed my tooltips to large. This is because I teach all the time, and if I hover over something, I want my students to be able to see it. The other thing too is like when you're watching someone who is screen sharing with like a 4K monitor, sometimes you'll see like these little white reference inferences. I don't really know exactly what they are, but when you start watching stuff on YouTube or you start watching folks on Zoom and you have a monitor resolution that matches, then you don't see any of those things anymore, which was kind of nice. And then the other thing that I used quite a bit was Dell Display Manager. So it turns out that if you're like, not all monitors support Dell Display Manager, but what it allows you to do is essentially break up your screen into multiple subscreens, so to help organize your desktop. And I find myself using, because when I teach, I'm using Zoom, I'm using SolidWorks, and I'm using OBS, right? We'll just go ahead and so like OBS is running, and then I have my chat window up on the right-hand side, and I have all these different applications running simultaneously, even like Voicemeeter Banana. And the reality is that when everything transitioned into like working from home, that I needed way more real estate, and I was like claustrophobic almost in a sense, with just my normal monitor resolution setup. So I guess just the benefit of like working with an ultra wide is, well, you can always like Windows left and Windows right, to organize your resolution there. But then you can also turn on Dell Display Manager, and that allows you to put like Windows left, Windows right, and then put something up and below, and have these all fixed in these locations, but then the real estate all just being in one monitor. So if you're used to working with two monitors, you can still get that feel with one monitor, so beyond just the Windows interface with Dell Display Manager, you can essentially assign your left hand half of the screen as one monitor and your right hand part of the screen as another monitor, and keep them completely independent as like two virtual monitors, one master monitor workflow. But so from the graphical standpoint, and then the other thing too is from the sketching standpoint, is that I can actually see my relations when I'm creating a sketch. So if I just bring up a new part here, we'll like sketch on the front plane, and I can see my inference lines very clearly, just as if I was running this in. I don't mean to say they look the same. What I mean to say is that the icons are the same size, which in the past has been a problem. So your icons would have been so small that you couldn't have read what these little relations are telling you. Like we would know, and that's coincident, that's horizontal, just based off what I've drawn. But the fact is, like, making those picks and clicks and then getting the hover. So I don't have any problems mousing over an edge and then hovering it and then it highlighting, telling me I'm selecting it. Same thing with like model edges and parts of sketches. Is unlike a 4K monitor that's really tiny, say like that 15-inch 4K monitor that's built into a laptop, you would constantly be like feathering this thing, right? Where you'd be like mousing left and mousing right. So anyhow, it looks like my screen sharing is getting a little choppy. So maybe it's the time to turn it back over. But this is my take on it, and I'm not going back. 4K forever.
And you bring up a great point, right? And a question that I get a lot is, hey, when I move to this big screen, which is super helpful because I'm trying to do my work. I'm trying to become a broadcaster. You know, I'm sharing content. I'm making content, and then I have other things going on, right? I've got chat windows. I've got email. I've got all this stuff going on. I'm used to just saying share screen, and now when I do that, like it's not working very well. And Dell Display Manager is a great way to slice up that screen so that you can create kind of your broadcast platform. Since we've gone to GoToMeeting and I've got other windows than I normally use in Zoom, I'm not using my Zoom broadcast Dell Display Manager setup, but I've got a Zoom broadcast DDM custom setting because in addition to those 38 presets that you were talking about, you know, kind of your geometric things you'd expect, halves, quarters, thirds, that kind of stuff, you can also do 2 custom views. And you can even tag the apps into specific areas. So when you open that application, it'll automatically paint itself into that portion of the screen. So it makes it, I think, a lot easier to manage all that. And then with the applications that we're using, you know, Zoom, you can point it to a window, you can point it to a screen, or you can even drag and share a portion of the window. So you've got 3 options depending upon what it is that you're doing for sharing only the content that you intend and keeping all the chat windows and everything separate.
You know, I
Adam,
forgot
one of the other oh yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I'd say it's made my editing for anything that I do for publishing like via YouTube, like night and day difference, just because I have more real estate. And then 2, I can edit, like I can produce something in 4K and look at the results now. So like I'm between using Camtasia, Camtasia 2020, and then DaVinci Resolve 17 for editing has been like there's no way for me to go back because it was like a cosmic waste of time before, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the 40, getting to do full UHD 4K and still have a third of the screen left over for tools and decoration, man, that's huge, absolutely. So one of the questions that I get from people a lot is, hey, I'm worried about, my planes, my lines, that kind of stuff. How is having a curved screen going to impact that? Like, am I going to start messing up my models because now I'm working on a curved screen instead of a flat screen? So what's your experience been so far?
Honestly, I can't tell a difference. I just assume it's flat, even though I know it's not. I perceive it as being flat, even though it has a pretty gnarly curve on it. Curved monitors are relatively new to me, I suppose, but I think that's kind of the intent, right? It's so wide that from a perspective point of view, if I look at the corners, then it looks further away. And so the fact that it's curved, it should maintain like aspect ratio with my eyes essentially. And I have halfway decent vision, so yeah, I'm looking at it now. You just draw attention to it. Yeah, I think it does its job. I think that it's doing what it's supposed to do, right? And it's fooling me in a sense to still be rectangular.
Yeah, good. I mean, I'm using the U40 also, and I wouldn't say that it looks curved to me. It looks flat. I mean, I guess if I look along the bottom bezel or the top bezel, I could see that it's a little bit curved, but perceptually very flat. And part of the reason for that is we're not trying to wrap these around your head, right? Really what we're doing is there's no such thing as a perfect display. And so even though we're using the world's best glass technology that's available for computer displays in plane switching, when you get to extreme angles, you can get a little bit of metamerism, you can get a little bit of color shifting and that kind of stuff. So we give it just a little bit of curve to pull those edges in just a little bit so that those really oblique angles stay in a nice high performance profile for the glass itself. And then, Adam, I'm surprised you didn't say as a professor, but one of the things I always tell people is, well, hey, if you're making sure that it's a straight line by your eyes, you're probably doing it wrong. The tool should be doing straight lines for you.
Yeah, sure. I dig it.
Cool.
Hey, we have
Well, let's see.
questions, I think. One of them says, hey, when you're working in ultra wide and you share your screen in Zoom or in Teams, how does that show to like the audience? And then there's another one. Well, we'll just answer that one first. Stephen asks that question. So how do you deal with ultra wide when you're in Zoom or Teams, Matt?
Yeah. So depending upon what the need is, so I will still use my I have my mobile workstation screen up right now, and so that's what you all are seeing is I'm painting my presentation to that screen. And so it's kind of nice. It gives me, like a little presentation monitor, and I'm working here. And Adam, you're here, and all the other stuff that we have for the broadcast is here. So I'm engaging with you, and then out of the corner of my eye is the content that I prepared. That's the first thing that I do. If you have an external monitor and a mobile workstation, that's ideal. The other thing that you can do is either use Dell Display Manager, or to a lesser degree, you can use just the Windows OS, Windows management functions built in to manage your windows, and then in the application, paint the content or select the content that you're going to share as that window, and then it will only share the content that's in that window. And then there have been a time or two where I need to share part of the content that's in a window, but not necessarily everything. And then in that case, I'll use share portion of the screen. And it's kind of like Snippet or something like that, where it'll let you actually drag a window, a box over your screen, and it'll share just what's in that box. Now, of course, if you move the window or something, then it's going to change that around. But you've got kind of three stages there. So our modern video conferencing solutions are actually pretty well adapted to that.
Yeah, I'd agree. And then we had one more question from Chris Manger, sorry. If I'm saying that right. If I butchered it, I'm sorry. I'm terrible at that. I even tell my students I'm terrible at that. But he says, hey, what is the software called to split the monitor into two virtual desktops? You just mentioned it was Dell Display Manager. And if you're running NVIDIA, there's an NVIDIA option too, or you can use Windows left, Windows right. But the Dell Display Manager allows you to like cookie cutter your screen into like multiple virtual monitors. And there's a whole bunch of pre-configured options there, Chris. And then there's two custom options from what I just understood from Matt. So that answers that. Hey, thanks for the questions.
Yeah.
We'll keep
and it's available for free. If you're using a Dell monitor, you can go to support.dell.com, go to the support page for whatever model you have, and then download it right there. It'll be in drivers and downloads. So it's free for you to use with a Dell monitor.
I'll put a link in chat for everyone.
Oh, even better. Cool. Okay, so let's talk connectivity a little bit. And, maybe we can kind of get a little bit of a feel for how everybody is breaking down in terms of their use of a mobile workstation versus a fixed tower, right? What I've been seeing over the past few years is it seems like the mobile workstations have really been taken over. That the towers aren't being used nearly as much for the flexibility and because the mobile workstations have gotten so powerful. Adam, you agree with that? Yeah. So then once we kind of do that, then depending upon if we're talking about a compute device that needs to be charged, needs power applied to it, or a compute device that basically is never going to go anywhere and it's going to be plugged into the wall and we don't have to worry about that, then we have kind of two different paths to make for connectivity. And because mobile has been so important, the Type-C connections have been of a lot of interest. Now we've got USB Type-C and we've got Thunderbolt 3, both in this space. Thunderbolt 3 is Intel specific. They've recently handed it over to the USB implementer for them. But the silicon currently is still theirs. And then USB-C is that, kind of ubiquitous. If you just, think of what you do with USB, USB-C is the next generation of that. And both of these give us the ability to push video to a monitor, transmit data So if you're hooking up peripheral devices that are low data requirement, like a keyboard and mouse, that's fine. Or if you're doing something that's higher data requirement, like video cameras or external storage, and then also push power back to that mobile device. So that's really, I think, what has a lot of people interested in, right? Is that now this monitor can be kind of the center of the desk. And with a single cable connection, one single cable, now you've hooked up to this compute device and you've got everything going. As a lot of companies are working on their return to work strategies right now and are playing around with the idea for the first time or just revamping flexible workspaces and hotel desks and that kind of stuff, having that USB-C connection, having the USB-C auto prioritization that we have in the majority of our USB-C monitors, and having the KVM functionality that our UltraSharps have make it really easy to deploy a fixed asset, whether it's a tower workstation for an engineer or a thin client for just a general task worker, and still accommodate somebody who's going to bring their own compute device into the office and use that workspace for the day. Adam, are you using multiple computers or are you only using one with that U40?
So I have my desktop at home, which is like my powerhouse. And then I have a mobile workstation that I use when I go out to clients.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Have you plugged both of them into the U40 and done that KVM thing yet?
You know, my laptop is it's a tool and I use it in a very specific way, and it stays in the backpack until I either have to update SolidWorks or update Windows, which happens frequently, or I have to go like do a demo at a location. But you know, that's the thing, is like everything's been online. I think in the past 3 months, I've gone to 3 or 4 different businesses to do presentations because that's what they requested. So yeah, whereas it would have been probably inverse, I would have done 4 online and then the rest in person. You know, the world's changed. And so Matt, I made these polls, and I wanted to make sure that we used them real quick. We have the what's your current monitor size poll, and then we have the currently using SolidWorks with poll. I just didn't want you to forget about those.
Oh, yeah. Let's go ahead and take a break and let's hear where everybody's at.
Which one should we do first? What's your current monitor size? So given everything that we've talked about now, I think we got 2 responses before. We got 2 people who said a 24-inch and like 227. So if I go ahead and launch this, what do I have to do? Open poll on everyone's screen so they can vote. Okay, launched. Let's do it. What is your current monitor size? 32 or larger, 25 to 31, 21 to 24. I'm glad these all make sense, by the way, but there's no overlapping regions. Or 20-inch or smaller. I suspect the people who are 20 inches or smaller are going to be the ones who are just using SolidWorks, or just using, not necessarily SolidWorks, but just using the monitor. So
maybe just the display that comes with the notebook.
That's what I meant. Yeah, you knew what I was saying. That's all that matters. So it looks like there's like an even spread across the board collecting answers. We'll give it like another 30 seconds or so. Wow, 76% of you voted. Thank you so much. So let's go ahead and close this. I think we can look at the responses now. Oh, just kidding. So I'll just tell you the responses. So 25% of you are using 32-inch monitors. 44% are using 25 to 31-inch monitors, and then 31%. So it's like a nice even spread actually, using 21 to 24-inch monitors. So some of the stuff that you've heard today, I think, will help you make the decision either to upgrade or to take a look at some different options. Now, I didn't, when I upgraded, I didn't, get rid of my other monitors. I have them. I have 2 of them on the left and on the right, specifically one, not landscape, one portrait for grading, because when I look at all my students' grades, I don't have to scroll down anymore, which is like really nice. So we're not saying get rid of those things, but we're saying like, these new monitors are going to help you out a whole lot. And you're just going to be, instead of looking from left and right and panning all the way around all the time, you're going to be more fixed to a central location, which is better for your body too. So, so there's number 1. Okay, so then is this question any different? Let's see. We'll do one more poll. If you're using SolidWorks, like how many monitors are you using to use SolidWorks? Let's go ahead and launch this one so we can get some ideas. Are you using 1 monitor, 2 monitors, or more? 1, 2, or more.
This will be interesting because more of the population was on bigger monitors than I would have expected. So it'll be interesting to see how many one monitor answers we get because they've gone to a big one. Don't necessarily have that granularity, but.
So we're looking at like a 1/3, 2/3 split. About 1/3 of people are just using one monitor, and then about 2/3 are using two monitors, and 81% of people voted. Ooh, someone's got 3. That's like 2 people in the group that have 3. We should have expanded to 4. Like if you're using 4 monitors, because then that gets really cumbersome too, because now you're out of head, like your neck can only turn around so far. So if you're using 4, it's just like, well, where's that 4th one and how are you using it? And then how can we get rid of that 4th one with, say, like a 40-inch, right? That would also be a nice solution. So we'll go ahead and we'll close that. I don't know how to show the polls, unfortunately, but I'm telling you, 28% one monitor, 67% two monitor, 6% 3 or more. Okay.
Switched everybody on 2. That's interesting. You know, it brings up another interesting thing that we've been doing in the Ultra Sharps for the past couple of years is doing multi-client monitors. And originally, kind of the idea here was we had a few customers who came to us and said, hey, we've got a substantial number of users who are using multiple client devices, multiple compute devices through their work. And, you know, it can be a trader who has his normal workstation and he has his high frequency workstation on a low latency network, right? And then he has his notebook running the Bloomberg terminal or something. And so, and you've all seen it in Wolf of Wall Street or whatever, right? To where, you know, the traders have just this ridiculous array of monitors sitting in front of them. And, you know, they get accumulated over time. Maybe the assets are formally purchased, or maybe they're just acquired and dragged into the office or whatever, right? But you end up with this very complex array to be managed, and the IT people hate it, especially when they have to move the groups or change buildings or something like that. I mean, it's just enough to give them nightmares. So to answer that, the first one we built out was a 43-inch. So our U43 is the second generation of it. And it's a 43-inch 4K monitor, but it's got a cool trick that you can actually hook it up 4 separate times and use it as 4 full HD monitors, discrete monitors. The OS sees them as discrete monitors on one piece of glass. And then if you want to flip around and use it as one big 4K monitor and put your model front and center, you can do that too. So that's pretty fun. Good. Okay, so we kind of cracked off the conversation around connectivity. Wanted to just kind of peel back a little bit, and I'm not sure why PowerPoint keeps swapping my screen.
While you're figuring that out, I'll look at some of these questions here real quick.
Oh, yeah.
Says we use Microsoft Teams and screen sharing allows you to pick either share desktop or share window. Does Dell Display Manager allow you to create virtual desktop side by side on the same monitor so that Microsoft Teams will allow you to share an entire desktop? That was also Chris.
It won't be a virtual desktop. The OS will see it as one desktop, but it will create containers to put that window in. So when you share the window, it's going to be bound by what you've done with Dell Display Manager.
And then Andy Young has a question about touchscreen. So Dell touchscreen monitors, what do you got for him?
Yeah, you know, that's interesting. Touch, you know, back when Windows 8 was coming, everybody's like, oh, everything is going to be touch. And I think we all kind of figured out pretty quickly, like, this is not fun. And it really doesn't work for high precision stuff. And by the way, we've had touch for a long time, and it's pretty high precision, and I can't get my keyboard and mouse up high enough to get into view. But we've we kind of have a tactile I/O, right, in our keyboards and mice. So that's kind of, I think, pulled down some of the interest and excitement around touch, except in a little bit more of a task worker oriented kind of thing. If the job can get distilled down into, a few buttons, then touch makes a lot of sense. But if you're trying to do something, with high precision, to where you're adding lines and planes and you're working on a drawing and stuff, unless it's precision touch, it's not working out super great. Now, in our precision group, our workstation group actually did something for quite a few years called Dell Canvas, where we had a 27-inch high precision touch. Hopefully some of you have seen that, to where you have a pen and you've got the screen right here that you can work on. In terms of our development for touch, currently we've got one single touch product in the portfolio. It's a 24-inch. But as I think really kind of the video conferencing, room controls, and wayfinding have been the key factors that have been driving touch that we're seeing from the market. So we are looking to broaden that out in the next 18 months or so. And probably one of those will have a little bit more of a graphics kind of application to it as well. Not necessarily to replace the canvas completely, but for somebody who wants a pen in hand to do drawing and graphics and that kind of stuff, so that we have an option for those industries.
Cool. Take it away. That was questions for now.
Yeah, cool. All right. So the last thing that I'll talk about then is in connectivity, right? So we talked about the Type-C connections and how cool and flexible they are for mobile, but it comes at a compromise. So if you look kind of underneath the red text towards the right of the screen here, you can see, versus normal Displayport, where you've got 4 lanes of video and you've got all that bandwidth to be able to push 4K resolutions and daisy chain QHD resolutions and all that kind of stuff. When you go to USB-C, that gets cut in half just in terms of lanes, because half of it gets dedicated to USB 3.0. Now we've got HBR3 switching in the majority of our high resolution USB-C models now. So we can actually give you the choice of, hey, am I hooking up high speed, high volume external storage and I need USB 3.0 speeds in the monitor hub? Or do I want to hook up another monitor to it and daisy chain them and keep that single USB-C connection back to my mobile workstation? So we've got resolution priority and data priority built into our monitors to give you that choice. And then as we get into next generation DisplayPort, especially on your desktops, right, where you've got a dedicated GPU, it's got DisplayPort outputs, you're really going to see some cool stuff coming as that bandwidth really starts to explode. You can see on the left here, right now we're at DP 1.4 with 25.9 gigabits per second. Once we get into DP 2.0 with the ultra high bit rates, especially once we can manage to get to UHBR20, then we're talking about tripling that bandwidth. So now we can start talking about, you want a daisy chain 4 4Ks? Go to it. You want a daisy chain an 8K monitor? Go to it, right? And have 2 of them. So really a lot of interesting things that we'll be able to do with displays there. In the meantime, I kind of alluded earlier that Thunderbolt 3 had kind of been handed off by Intel to the USB implementer for them. But, Intel has to come up with something new to sell more silicon. So Thunderbolt 4 is being announced. USB 4 is being ratified now. And with Thunderbolt 4, we'll have the ability to do a much better job of assigning those channels flexibly versus the data and the video than certainly Thunderbolt 3 can right now. So even the next generation coming, here in the next 18 months or so, we should start seeing platform shipping with it. We're going to have a lot more opportunities to do really interesting things with graphics, even for mobile devices that are still going to need that power feeding back into the system and sharing the data and all of that.
Now, Matt, I have a question for you too, because Thunderbolt would allude to connecting your mobile workstation to your monitors, correct? Essentially.
That's,
like
yeah.
that's your options, right? And then so when you're connecting your desktop to those equivalent monitors, like one of the things that I found out was like I have to be using DisplayPort, right? Because I get the resolution that I want, and I get the like I don't get the error warnings that says something like, oh, you know, you're not connected to DisplayPort. I feel like so that was the other thing that I learned was that like when I got the monitor, I had to go buy like a 12-foot DisplayPort cable, you know, because
Oh,
my desk stands up and moves down, I guess. So I needed a longer cable. But when I was running with DisplayPort to HDMI per se, which is what I had, I lost something. Does that sound right?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, HDMI is really just a new wrapper for DVI. So if you remember the old white cable that you used to have years and years ago, HDMI takes that DVI cable and puts it in a sleeker um, fitting to where it'll fit into Blu-ray players and Xboxes and that kind of stuff. Electrically, they're the same. So you're not getting a lot of benefits there. And the other piece is HDMI was really designed to take multiple devices, protect the signal, and then output to one video device. So it really comes more out of the video industry to where, you know, nobody wants you to be able to capture the Blu-ray that you're playing in the stream and then rebroadcast to yourself or have that file, right? So there's a lot of digital content protections and everything built into HDMI. DisplayPort was built by the computer industry for computer video. And so the video bandwidth is the priority for it. Doing fun things like multi-stream transport or daisy chaining are built into the standard. But the great thing is when you're looking at the Type-C connections, USB-C or Thunderbolt, for the video transport layer, they're built on top of DisplayPort. So you may not have a full featured DisplayPort. You may not have all the bandwidth that's available in a dedicated DisplayPort connection, but you've got some of those capabilities, right? You can do the daisy chaining. You can get to some higher resolutions and that kind of stuff.
Great. So we're
the other
open.
thing I'll say, just kind of a funny aside, the first time, I think 4 or 5 years ago now, that I had a conversation with NVIDIA, one of their product managers, about putting Type-C connections into their graphics cards, right? Because I was like, hey, you know, we're going here. Are you guys thinking about this? You know, let's kind of align. Right now, you're kind of doing a mix of DisplayPort and HDMI for your outputs. You know, are you guys prepping for the future? He almost had a heart attack because he thought what I was asking is, can you put a USB-C port or a Thunderbolt 3 port on the back of your graphics card to where I can hang a monitor off of it and power, not only push video to, but power that monitor? And in his mind, right, taking those watts out, that TDP out, is costing him pixels, is costing him polygons, right? And he's like, oh no, you know, whatever. And it's like, no, hold on. We'll provide the power. We can even give you power. But are you guys thinking about this? But really, VR is the reason why you're beginning to see Type-C connections show up on more modern NVIDIA graphics cards. Because for VR, you've got to have the display and you've got to have data signals as well for the controllers and the spatial recognition. So
That was very thorough. Yeah. I see the connection. I see the dots now. Yeah. So guys, we're gonna open it up to questions. I thought I'd kick us off with one. Only I'm trying to remember what I was gonna kick us off with. Oh yes. Do you have a recommendation, Matt, for folks like us engineers as far as the frequency of the monitors, the hertz, right? So you know we look. There's like 60 hertz. There's like 144. There's 120. There's 240, 480. Like what's your take on that?
yeah. The gold standard for a long time has been 60 hertz. And, you know, I think for the vast majority of commercial applications, that's plenty. You know, as you start talking about, you know, doubling that clock or something like that, the people that can, you know, really perceive all of those improvements, I think are fairly, is not the entire population. Now, I do think that there is some value for us to move, you know, as an industry and certainly as Dell monitors specifically, probably ultra sharp from 60 to 90 or 120 hertz. But it's really things like being able to read text more easily as you're dragging the window across somewhere. So it would give us a little bit of enhancement, but I think at this time, kind of with the way that we tend to work, when we're scrolling through documents, when we're dragging windows around, we're not trying to actively consume the data that's in that window at that time, right? We'll move the window and then we'll look into it and we'll start making our changes and stuff. So I think that it is something that's of interest to us. The downside to it is if we double the data rate at the same resolution, then we have the bandwidth that we have available, right? So if we could have, previously given you two 4K monitors at 60 hertz, and we go to a 4K monitor at 120 hertz, well, then that's the only one you get at that point, and you lose out on the benefit of having the extra resolution. Now, in a previous life, I was responsible for our PC gaming and Alienware monitors as well. That's a whole different thing. You're doing first-person shooters, fast twitch kind of stuff, and especially for the individuals who are paid professionals for playing video games all day. Yeah, sure. Something like our AW25 doing 480 hertz is awesome for them.
Very cool. That was. I think that's exactly like the simplified version is if you're a gamer, then you go to like the 120, 240, 480s, and if you're not doing gaming, then really spend more money on resolution and spend more money on real estate, and don't really worry about the refresh rate, the hertz rate. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time, especially in engineering, you're not trying to chase pixels around on the screen. So 60 hertz is sufficient. In fact, because my mobile workstation is a little bit older, I'm using my 40-inch at 30 hertz. But the input lag on it is great and all that. So honestly, I've had no issues using the U40 at 30 hertz.
So I wanted to wrap things up just by hopefully influencing the group here that 4K monitors are a thing in SolidWorks. Like we can use them now with the proper pixel density and the proper real estate, the proper aspect ratio. So if you're looking at making that jump to 4K, I would definitely suggest you go to like the 27 and above. And I think, and that's my guess. I don't know, Matt, what do you think that's about right? 27 is the smallest you'd want to go. 32 is probably optimum, and then 40 is better.
I'd say 32 is probably optimum for 4K.
Okay.
If you have great eyesight, yeah, go for a 27. That's fine. I think 32 is kind of a little more optimal because Adam, you're with the U40, you're looking at a 32-inch 4K plus a third.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say next is like I am absolutely 100% happy with my purchase on the 4K or the 5K by 2K 40-inch, right? And I think if I would have gone less, I was like, I'm not sure I would have like now that I've seen 40, would I like a smaller monitor? I don't know. It's like bigger is always better, I guess. That's what she said. I got you all. You guys can't do that to me. But 40 inches, right, is and using SolidWorks is like an excellent experience. I have no gripes about running SolidWorks on a 40-inch monitor, 5K by 2K. So something thereof, I would say, if you're looking to buy a monitor, go do it because you're going to be really happy with it. And specifically, go look at the Dell monitors.
Thanks for the plug, Adam.
Yeah.
We do make good stuff. I mean, we've had the world's #1 monitor business for the last 8 years, and in the U.S., we've been #1 for the last 23 now. So.